all of our church family, and if you're new here, if this is maybe your first time, or you ain't been here in a long time, maybe if you say it like that, man, we want you to know that we love you, and we're excited that you're here, but we love you so much that we don't want to leave you where you're at. We believe God has an awesome plan, exciting plan for your life. So we hope that in our time together that you sense the love and the hope and the joy that God offers you. And as we go to the preaching of the word here, we believe the Bible is the foundation of every decision that we could ever need to make. We believe it is truth. Everything else is shaky, shifting sand. The Bible is a rock solid foundation that you can build your life on. It never changes, hasn't changed in 2,000 years. Its principles are so good for you today. So we want to take that in. I believe that when I look at the Bible, as I read it, that it reads me. It shows me what I can be and who I should be, so I'm going to take it and ingest it because I want to become who God wants me to be. Well, I love a good welcome home moment. How about you? Love watching those videos. If I need a good cry, I love watching the videos of the soldiers coming home. You've seen those? Oh my goodness, I mean, like the very first one, I'm tearing up. It doesn't matter. It could be mama. It could be, a soldier showing up and seeing mama at work, or dad at the office, or the child at school, or whatever. Man, there's just tears. Everybody's in tears. I'm in tears. They're in tears. The dog's in the room. The dog's going crazy. You ever see those where the soldier shows up and the dog comes running and just doesn't know what to do? It's spinning around on its back, I love it. I love a good homecoming. I remember my first year of college coming home for breaks. Anybody remember those days coming home from college? Or maybe you're living those now. You're the one coming home, or you've got kids coming home from college. I remember reading about a guy who was in college and he was hating it. It wasn't fun. He had no money, decided he was going to write his dad a note, and he just real briefly wrote, "Dear Dad, no mun, no fun, your son," all right? A week later, he got a letter back from the dad, just as short, "Dear son, too bad, so sad, your dad." Oh, sometimes that's the way it goes, but it's a special interaction when a teenager, a young adult comes home from college. They always bring something special with them, don't they, Mom? Bags of laundry or baskets of laundry. And what's awesome is that you may think, Mom and Dad, there's been a change in your son or daughter, but there's been a change in Mom, because Mom was like, "Give me those clothes. Let me wash those for you. Let me fold them and nicely package them for you." Man, just last year, she's like, "Get those off the floor. You know what to do with those. Just a heap of mess in your room. Look at that." Isn't it funny how that shifts? When they go away and they come home, there's something special. There's some open arms. Doesn't matter what they bring back. And then what do we do? They're with us for a week. We tell stories. We play games. We talk a lot. We send them with those good-smelling clothes. Mom bakes some cookies and puts them in a package. Here's some for your roommates, too. Dad's got the car full of gas, slides his kid a 20. Love you, proud of you. Smack on the, go get him. Go get him, champ, right? Sometimes that's the way it works. Maybe not your house, okay. But there's something about that homecoming and then that sending them back out. There's a beauty there. All the hugs, the emotion. Everyone loves a heartfelt welcome and the warmth of coming home. And there is a story in the Bible with an incredibly warm welcome. It's about a dad and his two sons. It's called The Prodigal Son. Some have deemed this the greatest short story in all of literature. Like that's a pretty solid title, and it's from the Bible. And people have said this is the greatest short story of all. It's titled The Prodigal Son. It could be titled The Prodigal Sons, as we're going to look at. It also could be titled The Story of the Wonderful Father, because the dad in this story is an amazing guy. The Bible shows me something different than me, and it calls me to it. That's why we're going to look into the Bible today. We're going to enter the scene in a book called Luke. There's a guy named Luke, and he was one of Jesus' closest 12 disciples, one of his 12 closest friends. And Luke took and he wrote down a bunch of things that he saw Jesus do, or wrote down things that Jesus said, miracles that had happened, his perspective on the life of Jesus. The whole book is all about the life of Jesus. And he wrote some things down. And we're going to jump into his writings in Luke chapter 15. It's broken down into chapters. And we'll start at the first verse there. But we need to understand that Jesus is talking to a Jewish crowd. Okay, that's important to know because Jesus was Jewish and he's talking to a Jewish crowd as he did often. Here's what it says in verses 1 and 2. So if you've got a Bible, you can pull it out, open up your device. You can find Luke chapter 15. You can Google it if you need to, or we have it on the Sky Bible. I just want to say this right here is really cool, okay? This is really cool. This is awesome. Here's what it says in Luke 15. It says, now the tax collectors, I could stop right there, big old groan across the congregation, right? There's people watching online, boo, right? I'm sorry, if you work for the IRS, we love you, we still love you. Okay, we do. Now the tax collectors, moving on, and sinners, we're all gathering around to hear Jesus. Okay, so here's the scene. He's talking to a Jewish group of people. The tax collectors here are Jewish people. And what happened now is Rome has occupied the area. They've taken over and they've hired Jewish men to take taxes from the Jewish people and give them to the Roman government. That's why people don't like them. Okay, they're like, oh, they're tax collectors. They're like betraying their own people. And then it says, and sinners were there. Lower than tax collectors. Probably didn't bring sacrifices to the temple. Probably didn't honor the Sabbath. Probably didn't know much of the books of the Bible. They didn't know much of what was going on. So the people around Jesus were these types of people. And then the Pharisees, enter the religious people, verse 2. But the Pharisees and the teachers of the law muttered, this man welcomes sinners and he eats with them. They're like, ew. Because being the religious people, they would never do that. They wouldn't be around sinners and tax collectors because they were sinners and tax collectors. There was just this idea that we are better than them. And when they get their act together, they can be like us. They can be like the religious people. And Jesus tells a story to them. All these people who are listening, the Pharisees, tax collectors, and sinners, all Jewish. And he says this. He says, there's a guy who has a sheep, and the sheep gets lost. It gets out and gets lost. And the shepherd, he goes and he leaves the 99 that he has, and he goes and he finds the one. And when he does, he grabs it and he picks it up, he puts it on his shoulder, and he brings it back to the house. And when he gets to the house, he tells everybody about it and all of his neighbors, and there's this huge celebration, and he says, my sheep was lost and now it's found, celebrate. And so they all celebrated. Then Jesus tells a story about a coin and a woman. How a woman was at home and she realized she lost a coin. This wasn't just any coin, okay? This was a coin that was worth a day's wage. So today, it could be worth between, $80 and $120, how much you make a day. So maybe somewhere between there. So she was like, I got to find this thing. So she sweeps the house. She's putting on every lamp. Every light is on. You know, the husband's like, what are you doing? Every light in this house is on. What are we doing? Lighting up the neighborhood, right? That's how we respond as husbands, right? That's what we do as dads. And she finds the coin. And when she does, she celebrates and she lets her husband know, she lets the neighbors know, and there's a celebration. She's got it, I got it, I found it, it was in the house, it's right here. What was lost has been found, let's celebrate. So it's the same theme. Sheep lost, shepherd searched, shepherd found, everyone celebrated as it was brought back to the home. Coin lost, woman searched, coin was found, everybody celebrated in the house. Then Jesus goes into another story. The story I titled, The Wonderful Father. It's a story about something more important than an animal, more important than money. In Luke 15, moving down a few verses, verse 11 says this, and here's the way I'm going to do it. I'm going to read it a little bit. I'm going to share a little bit. I like preaching that way. I like the type of teaching. We read something and then okay, what does it really mean? You know, it's good to read the Bible that way. Read it a little bit. Oh, what does that mean? You can Google answers to find in Scripture. Okay, it's okay. And you can also go to commentaries, is what it's called, to dig a little deeper. So here's what it says in Luke chapter 15, verses 11 through 13. It says this. To illustrate the point further, so Jesus did the sheeps, he did the coins. Now, to illustrate the point further, Jesus told them this story. A man had 2 sons. The younger son told his father, I want my share of your estate now before I die. So his father agreed to divide his wealth between the sons. Just pause there. Just want to say how rude, right? Dad, I know you're not dead yet, but can we act like you are dead? Can I get my inheritance now? I mean, think about that. How rude is that? If your child came to you and said, Dad, can I have my inheritance now, Mom? Can I get my inheritance now? I mean, you'd be like, okay, well, I mean, if you say yes, I mean, you're like, okay, well, I got to divide that between your brothers and sisters, and okay, we may have to sell the house to make sure everybody gets what they need. And I mean, and this is what the dad did. He divided what he had and he gave it to the son. I thought, what, Dad? in his right mind is going to give half of the estate to his kid now? But this dad did. Maybe the dad was saying this. Maybe the dad was like, okay, fine, I'll do that. I've tried. Let's see how you fare as you flap your wings and fly from the nest. Maybe that's what he was saying. Verse 13. A few days later, this younger son packed all his belongings and moved to a distant land. And there he wasted all his money in wild living. The young son didn't waste any time. That money was burning a hole in his pocket. He had a little change in his pocket going ding-a-ling-a-ling, right? Called on anyways, I'm not going to get into that. But he didn't waste any time, right? He leaves home. He goes to a distant land. He's on his own. He gets to live by his own rules. So what does he do? He wastes the money on wild living. What that saying is he didn't save anything. He didn't think about the future. He spent his money without any morals, is what it's saying that he did. So if he didn't have any morals, what are some things he could have spent the money on? Well, hopefully he had purchased or at least rented an apartment, and maybe he filled it with, all the cool furniture from IKEA. Maybe he drove down to Fisher's and picked up some stuff that he had to buy and then put together. What is that, right? You pay for all this, $500 and you get to put it together. That's a great idea. It's a great deal. And maybe he paid somebody to put it together. I don't know. He's got nice clothes, nice shoes. And then he goes out and he's partying. He's blowing money on food. He's blowing money on booze. Who knows what else he's doing? If he was living immoral, spending his money immorally, you can probably fill in the gaps on what he could have been doing. Maybe gambling, maybe women, maybe drugs. Verse 14 says this, with everything spent, so he gets to a point where he has nothing left. With everything spent and nothing left, he grew hungry because there was a severe famine in the land. So he begged a farmer in the country to hire him. The farmer hired him and sent him out to feed the pigs. Everything's gone. He's blown dad's entire inheritance that was given to him. He's blown it. He's used it all up. Now, trouble comes. Some people are just like that, right? It's like there was no thought of the future, but today there's trouble. So he decides, all right, I got to try to fix this. There's a guy, he's a farmer, I'm going to go over there, and you need me to feed the sheep? Now, this is a Jewish boy and a Jewish audience, or the pigs. He's going to feed the pigs. They never would have touched a pig, been around a pig. They never would have eaten pig. They just ham, bacon, all the good things in life. And he says, I'll take the job. He is so low and destitute at this point. He's going against the convictions he was raised with. He's like, I will feed the pigs. I'm desperate. I've got nothing. I will do this. I will do this. He was living the high life, and now he doesn't even have his dignity. Verse 16, the son was so famished, he was willing even to eat the slop given to the pigs because no one would feed him a thing. All those people he was hanging with, all those people he was partying with, all the people he had in his apartment and the guys and girls he hung out with, nobody would give him anything, and he longed for what the pigs were eating. How low do you have to get? I mean, he is down. He is rock bottom. He is not in a good headspace. There's no way. Verse 17, humiliated. Ding. The son finally realized what he was doing. It finally came to him, and he thought, there are many workers at my father's house who have all the food they want with plenty to spare. They lack nothing. Why am I here dying of hunger, feeding these pigs and eating their slop? Can you feel the hope begin to build in him? He's like, I want to go back home. Hear him? I want to go back home to my father's house. What will I say? I'll say to him, Father, I was wrong. I have sinned against you. I'll never again be worthy to be called your son. Please, Father, just treat me like one of your employees. Something snapped. He came to his senses. He's like, what am I doing here? Sometimes Sometimes you're at the bottom for a while before you realize you don't have to stay at the bottom. There is hope somewhere. There is something that can happen. There's something I can do even to maybe change the situation. And he doesn't long for the slop that he sees. He doesn't long for that wild living he had endured. He actually didn't even long for the money. He was drawn towards home. He longs for home.
My feet stub the end of this road, swollen in the heat of my failings. My fingers bleed from shattered dreams. My throat falters. My stomach churns on endless regrets. And words rehearse to beg my way back in. I try to grab for a sense of worth, but the air is thin. Up ahead, a figure stands, and I know that I must face him. My shoulders drop, but his are lower, slumped in the weight of a child lost. His chest heaves in love's deep pain. His eyes reach to mine. Arms rise like dawnlit wings, and now he's running, his face a song. He falls on me, washing the squandered years in tears and kisses. He pulls me close, and those walls that I'd built so sure, so certain within, collapse now like petals to the touch of his embrace. His words pour like summer rain, weeping those names I've so desperately sought. My child, my pleasure, my springtime bloom, my ever after returned. He holds the bruises like tender flames, holds the sorrow, holds my mistakes, takes the heartbreak, the burning shame, and draws me home.
Thank you, Alex. That spoken word gives us a little bit clearer picture of maybe what the son would have felt. His thoughts towards dad, his thoughts towards where he was at. And it moves us into the moment where dad and son actually reunite. In verse 20 of Luke 15, it says this: so the young son set off for home. From a long distance away, his father saw him coming, dressed as a beggar. And great compassion swelled up in his father's heart for his son who was returning home. The father raced out to meet him, swept him up in his arms, hugged him dearly, and kissed him over and over with tender love. What a dad. What a reunion. What a welcome home moment for that boy. He was down and destitute, rehearsing, what can I say to dad? He probably won't take me back as a son. I'll serve him though. I'll work at the house. And dad races to him. Now, we have to understand what was happening in that moment. The dad would have been wearing a gown. as he would in the Middle East. And for his son, when he saw his son, if he ran to him, he would have had to pull up his tunic and expose his legs and bunch. I mean, girls ever tried to run in a dress, right? I mean, you know, guys, we don't get this. But this was dad. And so he bunches up his tunic and he runs to his son, exposing his legs, which would have been shameful. They just didn't do. They didn't wear shorts like we do maybe here in the United States. For the dad to do this and then to run, men of position. Older men, they don't run. Children run. Servants do the running. But here this dad is, pulling up his tunic, running to his son. Why does he run to his son? Well, we may think the easy answer is because he loved his son. Yes, he loved his son. But there's a ceremony called kazaza. Everybody say kazaza. Sounds fun, like Shazam, right? Sounds fun. Kazaza. And what would happen is this, is if a son were to leave, take dad's money, go and spend the money, and the Jewish community he's talking to would know all about, they would know why the dad ran. He would spend all the money in a Gentile nation doing things like what we've read, okay, and all. If he was to come home, the city elders or the village elders would go out to meet the boy. And they would ask questions like, why are you here? Why do you look the way you do? What have you been up to? Okay, what have you done with the money? And at the end of that, if they deemed that the boy was not allowed back into the community, they would take a clay pot and they would break it at his feet, representing, you have been broken off from us. You have been separated from us. You are no longer part of your family or this community. Shame, rejection, guilt, condemnation. So when dad sees the son and pulls up his tunic in shame and runs to his son, he is trying to beat the elders to his boy. That's what he's doing. And when he meets his son, he embraces him with love and grace and forgiveness. And I'm sure that these elders would have followed behind. They maybe wouldn't have run, but they would have caught up. And they would have seen this dad, arms around the boy, kissing him and hugging him. And just, my son, my son, my son, my son. And there would have been no kazaza ceremony because dad took the shame upon himself to bring the son back home. Isn't that awesome? That is just so beautiful. We get a better picture of why the dad's running. He's going to outrun those who will cast shame and judgment, embracing the son. Verse 21, let's keep reading in the Bible here. Then the son said, Father, I was wrong. I have sinned against you. I could never deserve to be called your son. Just let me be. And the father interrupted the son and said, Son, you're home now. How beautiful. How beautiful. Such swift forgiveness on the father's part. He doesn't ask any questions. Doesn't say, where have you been? Where's the money? Why do you look like this? Why do you smell like this? Why are your clothes? What's the matter? Why's your hair? He doesn't say any of that. He says, you're home now. You're home now. Verse 22, turning to his servants, the father said, quick, bring me the best robe. Bring my robe, the one that I wear, the one that shows that I'm the man of the house, and I will place it on his shoulders. Bring the ring, possibly a family signet ring. He says, put it on his finger. It's the seal of sonship. I'll put it on his finger. And bring out the best shoes you can find for my son. Let's prepare a great feast and celebrate. For my beloved son once was dead, but now he is alive. Once he was lost, but now he is found. And everyone celebrated with overflowing joy. What a welcome. Blowing that boy's mind. He's got to be like, I didn't anticipate this. I don't know what to do. I'm overwhelmed. This is not how I expected this to go down. I love that. And dad is just so gracious, helping him to identify with, no, this is who you are. You aren't that beggar. You aren't wherever you came from. And you aren't whatever you did. You're my son. And I love you. Let's go back home. And he got all cleaned up and they had this party. It involves everyone in the celebration. They barbecue the fatted calf that would be used for religious ceremonies. And they didn't even save that calf for the ceremony. They brought it to party with this son. That gives such a good, clear perspective. You remember what was talked about the sheep and the coin? It's also said about this boy. My son was lost, but now he's found. And the dad takes it a step further. He was dead, and now he is alive. As great as the welcome home was for the younger son, not everyone at the house was excited that he came home. Let's read the rest of the story. Let's jump to verse 25. Says this: Now the older son, being faithful to his responsibilities, being there for dad when dad needed him, getting up every day, doing the work, honoring the family Bible, the family teaching and training, family religion. He was working out in the field when his younger brother returned. And as he approached the house, he heard the music of celebration and dancing. He's probably like, oh, okay, dad's throwing a party. Okay, well, he knew what he needed to do as the son, as the firstborn son. He was supposed to be at the right hand of his father every time a guest came, or if there's any celebration. He was there to be dressed in good clothes. He was there to serve and welcome everybody who came in. Anything that dad needed, so that dad didn't have to leave the party, the oldest son would go take care of. He would do this. So here's his response after hearing the celebration, the dancing. He calls over one of the servants. He says, hey, what's going on? What are we celebrating? In verse 27, the servant replied with excitement, I'm sure, it's your younger brother. He's returned home. Your father is throwing a party to celebrate his homecoming. And the response of the older brother, the older son, became angry or enraged and refused to go in and celebrate. So his father came out and pleaded with him, come and enjoy the feast with us. The son, the older son, saying, no, that kid who did this, I'm not going in there. I'm not going to fulfill my duties as the firstborn with my dad because he didn't do it, and now he's getting celebrated. What is that? What's the boy doing? He's comparing himself to his brother. If you want to lose all your joy in life, compare yourself to somebody else. Compare yourself to what somebody else has got or what somebody else is doing. And that's exactly what he did. He went from, hey, what's going on? There's a party. He's like, what? There's a party for him? What is this? Verse 29, the son said, Father, listen, how many years have I worked like a slave for you, performing every duty you've asked as a faithful son? And I've not once disobeyed you, but you've never thrown a party for me because of my faithfulness. Never once have you given me a goat that I could feast on and celebrate with my friends, as this son of yours is doing now. He's saying, I did it all right. Dad, I have done it all right. I've dotted every I. I've crossed every T. I have been there thick and thin. It's like, and what have you done for me? Wow. So appreciate the dad's love for the older son, just as much as he loves the younger son. Because the dad leaves the party and comes and says, son, hey, listen, you're not catching what's actually happening here. You may be the older brother, but there's still some things I can teach you. This boy was lost, and now he's found. And it's not about you. It's not about him. It's not about me. He's saying it's about relationship is what it's about. It's about our home. It's about those who are supposed to be here being here. And when they come back, we welcome them home. It's all about that relationship. The older son continues, verse 30. Yet when this son of yours comes back, doesn't even say, but when my brother, he's like, no, this son of yours, he's removing his identity from that boy, is what he's doing. He's saying, I don't care if he's my brother, he's your son. That's what it is. Yet when this son of yours comes back after squandering your money on prostitutes, you celebrate by killing the fatted calf. His father said to him, look, dear son, you've always stayed with me and everything I have is yours, which is a true statement. He's like, son, hey, he had his. He was given his. Everything I've got and everything we get now, by the time I die, it is all yours. It's like, you get all of this. It's like in comparison, it's a calf and a party. You get everything. He said, verse 32, we had to celebrate this happy day, for your brother was dead and has come back to life. He was lost, but now he is found. Again, the dad makes a statement about the younger boy's homecoming. We had to celebrate him coming home. He was dead and is alive. He is lost. He was lost and now he is found. This story could be entitled The Prodigal Sons because both sons are dealing with some type of brokenness. They're both dealing with some thoughts of selfishness. They're both dealing with dishonoring their father in some way. Both of them have neglected their relationship with dad in some way. So they both ultimately are guilty. So you may say, okay, great, Pastor Rob, you told us a cool story, the greatest short story in all of literature, awesome, but what does that mean for you and me today? What does this mean for me? When Jesus is talking to the Jewish community, he's talking about that sheep, talking about that coin, he's talking about the son. There's somebody who pursued and created a celebration. That was the shepherd, that was the woman, and that was the dad. And what Jesus is doing in this moment is he's saying, they are me. He's saying, I'm the shepherd who goes and finds that lost sheep. And when I bring it in, we celebrate. I don't scold the sheep. I don't say, look what you did, you dumb animal. He doesn't say that. And when he finds the coin, he celebrates. He's the one that went and looked. And with the son, he's saying, I'm the father. I'm the one with my arms stretched open to you, tax collectors and sinners and Pharisees, is what he's saying. He's saying, my arms are open to you. And he's saying to us today, my arms are open to you, lost sheep. If you feel like you're the lost coin and nobody notices, if you feel like you're far from home, I'm the father with the arms wide open. He said, you're the sheep that's gone astray, and I am looking for you. In Isaiah, a book in the Old Testament, he was a prophet and a writer. He wrote, we all are like sheep and have gone astray. He says, all of us, every single one of us in this room, everybody watching online, we all have gone astray. But the father, the shepherd, the woman, they all open their arms and they receive what was lost. And when it is found, they celebrate. All heaven celebrates when someone who is lost comes home to God the Father and says, I want to reestablish a relationship with you. The angels rejoice. Jesus stands on the throne and says, look, Dad, there's somebody else. They are coming home. They're coming home is what they're doing. The younger son, in that whole emotional reuniting with the prodigal, the dad, it was clear there would be no kazaza ceremony. There would be no ceremony where there would be a breaking of a pot, shame was given, judgment cast. There would be none of that because the dad beat them to it. The dad beat them to the punch, beat him to that moment. You and me, what does that mean for us? You and me, sheep who have gone astray, people who do wrong, we talk bad about people, give into temptation, fly off in anger, people who are broken, empty, maybe some desperate, broken like this pot. At Easter, we celebrate that Jesus, that good shepherd, that father, didn't allow kazaza to happen to you and me. But he stretched out his arms on a cross and died for you and me. And he took that shame. He took that shame naked and beaten. A punishment reserved for those who were guilty. Jesus wasn't guilty. That son was guilty. That dad wasn't guilty, but yet he took the shame on himself to restore the brokenness of his son. And he had so much love that he restored the brokenness of his older son too. And Jesus has so much love for you that he wants to restore the brokenness that is in you. He wants to restore the broken relationship between you and dad. And he loves you so much that he died for you, but he didn't stay dead. He didn't stay dead. Death couldn't keep the creator of the world down. So when Jesus died, it was impossible. He was going to rise again. And 3 days later, he rose again. And here we are on Easter Sunday, celebrating that love and that resurrection. That son coming back to dad, that love that dad had for the son, it's a picture of all of us, each one of us. Worship team, you guys can come on out. I want to tell you a story of a guy named Matthew. I got a picture of me and Matthew here. We met for coffee back in January. And Matthew was like, hey, I just want to tell you my story. I'm like, awesome. And Matthew was raised in a home that went to church. And like most homes, there's struggles, there's issues, there's just things that go on in life, right? And by the time Matthew turned 17, he was like, I'm getting out of the house. You know, some drugs had played into his life. If I get the story completely correct here. Matthew left, went to Washington State, found some friends who really led him into a crazy lifestyle of drugs and just, man, a mess. Matthew met a girl, moved to Colorado, and he gave me permission to share the story. He ended up in jail twice because of dealings with her and just what was going on. And one day after he got out of jail, he was already living on the streets, man. He had no place to stay, kind of couch surfing, kind of homeless. One day he had a very, very bad heroin trip, and he was blind. And he's walking the streets, and he's like, I'm just trying to get back to where I was sleeping. And so I'm trying to walk, and a guy knew me, or a guy called out my name, Matthew, and I knew his voice, recognized it. And Matthew said, I just wanted to find my mat. I just needed to find where I was gonna bed down. I was looking for that. And so the guy put him there, and like I said, Matthew was blind, and he said he just laid there. His heart was just pounding and racing, and he finally went to sleep. And when he woke up the next morning, he could see. But his bed mat was gone, his backpack was gone, his wallet was stolen with his ID in it, his phone was gone, even his shoes were taken. And Matthew said he stood up on the sidewalk there, and he's like, I'm already low. I'm homeless, I'm a druggie, I got nothing and nobody, and now this? Ever get so low you feel like, can anything else be taken from me? And Matthew just broke down. And he said in his brokenness, he just felt an arm wrap around him and a peace and a love come over him. And he said, I knew it was the Father. He said, I knew it was his love and his warmth. He said, I knew it. He goes, I dropped down to my knees and I just said, Jesus, I need you. I need you. I need you. And the Lord met him right there. Matthew contacted somehow dad and mom. Dad, I think, drove out and grabbed him and brought him back home. And Matthew reconciled with his mom, reconciled with his dad. He's been clean the last couple of years. He's been serving. He's been serving people who, your experiences, God will allow you to use those experiences and victories so you can breathe and speak life into other people. And Matthew is sitting here on the fourth row over here today. Amen. Thank you. Matthew, thanks for letting me share your story. It's a real prodigal son story is what it is. It's not just a story we read in the Bible. Folks, this is life. We make decisions sometimes that lead us down a dark path, that lead us so far from home, that lead us so far from what we knew, so far from what we've been raised to believe. For some of us, that maybe that was a good thing to get out of home, but for most of us, there's a longing, there's an emptiness. There's decisions we've made and things we've fallen into that have trapped us, that have bound us. And I want to let you know that there's a good, good Father in heaven who loves you so much that if you'll make your way towards him, he will run to you. He will love you and he will embrace you and he will bring you home. He will say, welcome home. And he will restore you and give you peace and hope and joy. What you're looking for. That prodigal son, what he was looking for and the wild living and the drugs and the people was actually back at home. It was actually waiting for him at home. And when he finally realized, when he woke up and realized where he was at, he said, I'm going home. And the Father embraced him and brought him in. There's the older son. Maybe you identify with the younger son, or maybe you identify with the older son. Maybe you notice jealousy in your own life. Maybe you struggle with that comparison. Maybe you're lacking joy. The Father loves you and he invites you into the party as well. And he invites you into a deeper relationship with him. Jesus follower, maybe you're doing all the things you know to do. You're showing up to church, you're giving in the offering and paying your tithes, you're praying, you're reading your Bible, you're trying to live right, but there's just something missing. And you notice that there's some of these things. There's some brokenness in you still as well. The Father loves you. And he says, hey, don't focus on that, focus on me. He's like, I've got what you need. I've got what you need, I'm here. And he loves you so much that he'll embrace you and he will walk alongside of you. May we never be people who identify with the religious people. May we never be like a religious person who looks down our nose at the grace that's given other people and say things like, I can't believe that they're at our church. Well, we let you in the church, right? You let me in the church, so why shouldn't why shouldn't we be here? There's 3 responses to what we've shared today. Just 3 responses to our time together. One, maybe this is you. There's a defensive response. You could say, preacher, you don't know me. You know my life. I'm not who you think I am. Don't act like you know it all. And I don't know it all. I don't. We just came together and I'm sharing a little bit. But I know somebody who does know. I know somebody who knows you. He knows you. And he is still waiting for you. That bridge isn't burned. And if you don't know Jesus, if you don't know his Father, if you don't have a relationship with him, you can be defensive or you can be open. Proverbs 14 reminds us that there's a way that seems right to a person, but in the end it leads to death. We're not just talking physical death, we're talking a prodigal son type of life, of emptiness, lostness. And if you want to stay defensive, that's your own, that's your right, that's your privilege. And I will give that to you. But the Father loves you. God's way is better than your way. So you can be defensive or you can be remorseful. You can realize I'm wrong. I feel shame. I'm afraid to open up about my life. I'm confused about eternity. There's no judgment here. There is zero judgment here. When I started out today, I told you, I love you, we love you, but we love you too much to leave you maybe where you were at. So that's why we challenge you. And if there's some remorse and you're like, man, I'm sensing it, praise God, because I believe the Son is speaking to you. I believe Jesus is saying, hey, I'm right here. Now, there's a difference between condemnation and conviction that I think we all need to understand, and that is this. Condemnation is rooted in shame. Okay, I'm shameful. I can't show my face what I did. Conviction reminds us that there's hope. See, conviction says, I've done wrong, but I think I can find something better. I hope there's a better way. I hope there's something else. You see the difference? Condemnation is going to keep you down. Conviction can draw you closer to moving forward. You can be defensive, you can be remorseful, or you can be repentant. Repentant. You can say, I see where I'm at. I see myself as one of those 2 sons. And today I don't want to be like that. I want it to be different. I want a closer, intimate relationship with God. I want that. And repentance is simply this, saying, I don't want that anymore. I walk away from it. Repentance, it really means that. It means to change your mind and change your direction. If someone's really repentant, they will say, I'm sorry, and not do it again, right? And so if you're repentant today, and you come back home, the Father will say, I see that and I love you and I embrace you.